Good evening and welcome everyone. I'd like to call the Cleveland County Board of Education meeting for Monday, November 8th to order. And our first order of business is our invocation. We have Reverend Francis Weber with Washington Outreach Ministry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Let us pray. Dear God, we say thank you. We thank you, God, for allowing us to come here tonight, God, to assemble, God. We thank you, God, for allowing us to entrust us with your children, God, in making decisions, God, for them and for the community, God. God, it's a privilege to be here tonight, God. Bless each and every one that you have put in charge, God, over this session tonight. And God, we say thank you. It is a privilege to be able to pray. We thank you, God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And on a personal note, I'll say Reverend Weber's ministry is outstanding. I got to visit last year. She does a remarkable work, her and her team. If you ever get a chance to go visit, I highly recommend it. Take your checkbook or your work gloves. They'll take either. So they do a good work. So next we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hunt. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And next we have some special recognition, and I'll call on Miss Wendy Fitch.
Chairman Queen, board members, Dr. Fisher, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. The Exceptional Children's Assistance Center is a private, nonprofit parent organization committed to improving the lives and education of all children through a special emphasis on children with disabilities and special health care needs. The ECAC recognizes the power and value of the voice and ideas of young people, especially those with disabilities. In October 2020, ECAC launched a newsletter, Young Exceptional Perspectives, a quarterly publication produced by and for North Carolina youth with disabilities. The Young Exceptional Perspectives North Carolina's Got Talent column was designed to put a spotlight on the many talents and abilities of North Carolina youth and young adults with disabilities. Submissions included poems, artwork, blogs, videos, songs, and essays. Tonight, we have 3 Cleveland County students who are here with us, and their talent submissions were featured in the 1-year anniversary edition of the Young Exceptional Perspectives. If I could have B.J. Ross, Isaiah Watson, and Tyrese Hopper to join us up here. BJ and Isaiah submitted songs, and Tyrese submitted his original artwork and animated videos. We are so pleased that these young men were able to join us tonight, and we want to let them know just how proud we are of them. So please join me in congratulating BJ, Isaiah, and Tyrese for their accomplishments.
Dr. Shull, you want photos? Yes, sir. Okay. If y'all would come down in front of the lectern. Okay, something new as part of our recognition section. We'll have some announcements added from the board, from the school system to help get more information to the public and the parents. Some of these you may get through emails or notices from your school, but we're just reiterating those for you tonight. The American Legion Oratorical Contest. The Post-82 Oratorical Contest will be held on Saturday, January 15th at the Boys and Girls Club on Sumter Street, and information is available at each high school or with Dr. Greg Shaw. If you have any questions, please contact your school counselor or Dr. Shaw. And November is Career Development Month. November 17th is CDC Day. The Career Development Proclamation from Governor Cooper's office is attached to the Friday email. Cleveland County Schools is extremely proud of our career and technology programs, teachers, and staff. CTE and career development is a pathway that directs students to post-secondary success in their careers and in life. Cleveland County Schools has a rich history of excellence in career and technical education as well as career development. Just recently, students from Burns and Crest competed at the national level in their respective areas of interest. And I believe Dr. Fisher and Dr. Hunnell have some certificates.
Thank you, Mr. Queen, members of the board. As Mr. Queen said, Governor Roy Cooper has joined the nation this month in declaring November as Career Development Month and November 17th as Career Development Coordinator Day. Cleveland County Schools and our Career and Technical Education Department are fortunate to have 4 outstanding CDCs in our high schools. Our CDCs work diligently every day to support our CTE students, teachers, and programs. Their passion is involved in career guidance and work-based learning opportunities for our students. And tonight we recognize and honor our CDCs for their critical role as they play as a part of our CTE team. When I call their name, if they'll come up, Dr. Hunnell has a certificate for them, and we'd like them to come in front and get a picture with their board for the great work that they do. First, from Burns High School, Nicole Hamrick. Second, from Crest High School, Penny Klontz. From Kings Mountain High School, Kay Harris. And from Shelby High School, Rhonda Branch. Please join me in congratulating these CDCs for their wonderful work. We'll ask you guys to
Just have 2 more. Report cards were distributed this past week. That was a happy week for all our students, I'm sure. As many people know, student information and grades are kept in the student information system called PowerSchool. Parents can use the parental portal in PowerSchool to quickly look up their child's grades. If you're a parent and have not signed up for access to PowerSchool, please contact your child's school for login information, and parents will have to visit the schools to get that information due to confidentiality concerns. And finally, the Cleveland County Board of Education and district staff would like to recognize 3 employees who have passed away since the beginning of the school year. Please join our school family in remembering these individuals and their families. We have Bruce Bridges, who is a teacher at Crest Middle. David Lattimore was a permanent substitute and bus driver at Shelby High School. And Sierra Porch was a teacher's assistant at Kings Mountain Intermediate. So we keep those families in our thoughts and prayers. And recognizing guests, do we have any principals or assistant principals with us tonight? I know we've got a few. Raise your hand and wave. Maybe they've already left. Any North Carolina Association of Teachers Assistants? Do you have any teachers or NCAE representatives? Any elected officials? I didn't see. And parents. Do we have any parents or grandparents? Okay, I finally got some folks to raise their hand for something. Okay. All right, next is adoption of the agenda. I do have one change to make before voting. Item 8.04, which is our surplus properties, that's the Grover property and Central School. We need to move that to the end at 14:01 after closed session so we can consult with our attorney before deciding on that. So with that change, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to amend the agenda that we move the personnel report to after the closed session.
Okay, if there's no objection from the board, we can just do that. I'll do that as chair before we vote, okay? So we'll put personnel as 14:02. And we'll get to adjourn at 15. All right, what's the pleasure of the board on the agenda?
Motion approved.
Motion by Mr. Fitch,
Second.
second by Mr. Taylor. Any further questions or discussion on the agenda? All those in favor, if you'd raise your hand. And that's 9-0. Next is public participation. And we have 12, I think that's right. We have 12 signed up for public participation. So that's 36 minutes. That exceeds our 15. Is there any objection from the board to opening up and allowing all 12
Well, I
speakers?
make a motion, we allow them to speak.
All right. Is there any objection? If there's no objection, we'll just, okay. I'll remind folks, there's 3 minutes for each speaker. There's a timer. You'll be able to see that on the screen. It turns yellow at 30 seconds left, turns red when 3 minutes is up. I'll do my best to hold tight to the 3 minutes because we have so many. If you've got prepared notes, 3 minutes is about a page worth. If you've got 4 or 5 pages, you're just not going to make it. So you might want to start working on your notes before your turn to speak. But we'll proceed. Our first speaker is Marge Hooper.
I'd like to talk to you about the deceitful way the chairman, the vice chair, and the person sitting to your immediate right have behaved in the last 2 weeks. It's unprecedented that a chair and vice chair would work to unseat a board member that has been elected for 9 years. Contrary to what your ex officio GOP chairman has told everyone, he does not run Cleveland County. He did not get Tim Moore elected. He couldn't even get himself reelected to the city council. When Violet Duke trounced him several years ago, the city council celebrated. Ask anyone on the city council. They did not want him on the city council. The people voted for the board member for 9 years, not the former GOP chairman. I dare you to tell all of Cleveland County tonight that the former GOP chairman is the one running Cleveland County. That person is a misogynistic, narcissistic, pompous, this is a deceitful, scheming plot to unseat someone who has worked for the students, the parents, and the taxpayers. I think this is like, there's something wrong here. Don't you have an ethics committee? Don't you have something that says we can't do this? Can you really go rogue and do whatever you darn well please and get this man off the board? Really? Conformity is doing what you are told, no matter what. Integrity, which you don't have, is doing what is right, no matter what you are told.
Our next speaker is Glenda Green. Ms. Green?
Dr. Fisher, Mr. Chairman, board members, I'm Glenda Green. I'm here speaking for Glenda Green. I'm representing no group. Because I work at Crest High School part-time, it does affect some of that. My first question is, how much money did you receive from the federal government or state or combined for COVID? How much of it have you spent? What did you spend it for? What do you plan to spend the remainder of it for? My next question would be, we're short probably every school, I don't know. I can only speak for our work. At Crest High School with custodial staff. I was thinking in my mind if there's any money available, possibly at night or on the weekends, hiring a cleaning crew to come out and help our faculty and our principals. Mr. Robeson has been washing commodes and sinks. Mr. Shields has been doing the same thing, hauling food. I'm just asking for help if there could be maybe from that for a cleaning service. Maybe other schools need the same thing, I don't know. But that maybe is a possibility of having a cleaning crew at night, on the weekends to help out in cleaning the schools and getting things in shape. The second thing I would like to mention is, excuse me, Jada Brown is in charge of our lunch. I would respectfully ask that a couple of microwaves be opened up at the high schools, that the students could warm their lunches that they bring from home. I watch the days I'm over there, more food is wasted than it is eaten. You can only eat carrots, broccoli, and cauliflower so long, till it gets kind of rough. But it would be nice if they could have some microwaves in which to warm up what they bring from home, if at all possible. There might be a reason she can't, I don't know. Another thing I'd like to mention is, and this is strictly, I've heard this by word of the grapevine from none of you, but word of the grapevine, that when our new auditoriums are built, a possibility is that part of the front yard at Crest and maybe Burns is going to be taken up with parking lot. Maybe that's the only feasible way to do it, I do not know. I do know it will ruin the looks of the high schools if parking lots have to be placed in the front yard of either school or both schools. We want our auditoriums, we wanted them, needed them for 50 years. So I'm sure I'm not talking it down. I'm just saying, could we go to the drawing board if what I've heard might be happening, that those parking lots be removed from the front of the building and placed somewhere else, if at all possible. And I would like to thank you for what you're doing, and thank Dr. Fisher for what he's doing, but that's what is my interest tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Junie Barrett.
I'm curious of what kind of grade each of you on the school board and leaders of the school system would give yourselves. I'm sure it would not be the same grade we, the taxpayers, would give you. You tend to be a narcissistic group of do as I say, not as I do leaders. How are we, the public, supposed to trust leaders who are sabotaging each other, secretly having meetings and going behind each other's backs to overthrow one another? I do believe it was the voters who elected you to the board. It will be the voters who will vote you off of this board. If there is going to be any overthrown, it will be by the public. In the past 10 years, the leadership of this school system has been disgraceful. Everything starts at the top, bad or good. For a decade, this system has been decaying. The good old boys mentality of different rules for different fools at different schools is wearing thin. Your self-righteous, blatant behavior of punish the innocent and praise the guilty has not gone unnoticed. You are not listening to the students, employees, or taxpayers. Open your ears. You are in your own little world doing what makes you look good, and especially what looks good on paper. You consider it public perception. We consider it BS. The citizens of Cleveland County have been watching a circus run by a behind-the-curtain ringmaster. Enough. It is time to clean up the mess. Perhaps the reason bullying runs so rampantly throughout the schools is because you so-called leaders are at the top of the food chain of bullies. It is the trickle-down effect from the board to the county office leaders to school administrators to faculty and staff and finally students. You are the ones setting the bad examples. By the way, your final grade is an F for failure. It is time for all of you to go back to start or turn in your resignations. You have wasted enough of our time and tax dollars.
Aaron Sellers.
I don't know if I can compete with that. I'm just gonna wing it. I'm waiting on my 3 minutes to pop up. There we go. All right. I think it's pretty terrible that y'all would have a meeting behind closed doors about one of your fellow colleagues. Honestly, that's terrible. Y'all have lost the ones that I did vote for this past year. You lost pretty much my respect when y'all keep going on with the mask mandate. I know there's religious exemption. I know that there is a medical exemption as well, but there was a 5-3, 6-4 vote. Now, there's only one person up here, and this is the one that's held his ground the entire time, and y'all were trying to overthrow him. He's the only one that wants a person's choice. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's hilarious that half of y'all put on masks when the camera comes on, and then you take it off as soon as you walk out that door. I was going to bring my yard sign that I had for y'all, but I mean, after hearing what y'all have done to him, I mean, you lost my respect for the votes for the people's choice. Now you lost my vote.
Go Brandon! Go Brandon!
Dina Spangler.
When did schools stop being educational institutions and become a medical one? Last week, I heard that our schools could start giving vaccinations without parental consent. So anything that I hear, like normal, I do my own research because I don't take it at face value. I want to know what's going on. On the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services website under COVID-19 vaccine update, which was updated last Tuesday, November the 3rd, 2021, I was deeply disturbed with what I read. On page 3, there's a section titled, "Can people under the age of 18 get a COVID-19 vaccine without parental consent?" Here's what it says. Once a vaccine is fully approved by the FDA, written consent is no longer required. North Carolina law also gives people under the age of 18 the ability to make certain health decisions, including the choice to get a COVID-19 vaccine if they show the decisional capacity to do so. Decisional capacity is a person's ability to understand their health and healthcare needs and options. Basically what they're saying is if you guys will allow a vaccine clinic to be held at the schools, like I know one was done at Crest High School. I called, talked to the school nurse this morning before. If my 14-year-old son decides he wants to get a COVID-19 vaccine, he can do that without my permission. That's wrong. He can't even remember to brush his teeth in the morning and at night before bedtime. I'm his mother. It is my responsibility to make his health care choices until he becomes of age. Who decides at the school what his decisional capability is? He's smart, don't get me wrong, but he will also follow the crowd and do what his buddies do, even if that puts his health in jeopardy. I'm not okay with that. You guys should not be okay with that. These parents should not be okay with that. Just because other schools decide to do that in other districts and other counties does not mean that Cleveland County schools should follow suit. We need to be bold. We need to be brave. We need to be unapologetic when it comes to standing up for our children. And putting our children's health at risk is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to me. It's unacceptable to my family, to my friends, and it should be unacceptable to you guys. You guys took an oath to do what's best for our children. The question is simple. Is this in the best educational sense for our children? If the answer is yes, go for it. If the answer is no, it's a simple no. You don't do it. We are not a medical institution. You guys don't allow the schools to be a medical institution. Please do what you were elected to do. Stand up for our kids. We can stand out here and we can fuss all day long, but until you nine unite and put political agendas aside and say this is what is best for our kids in Cleveland County, we're done for. We're done for, and I'm disappointed. I expect you guys to look out for my child and everybody
Sorry, Ms.
else's
Spangler,
child.
your time's up.
Amen.
Our next speaker is Nan Leonhardt.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak up and speak loud, and Mr. Queen, if you would, Chairman, please put your microphone down so that the rest of us can hear. There's a lot of people here. So, as I handed you the pictures, they were censored, and if you'll read the second page, that's the names of the books that I've been told are in Cleveland County schools. Our Lieutenant Governor, his speech is on the third page. I'm going to read a few words. This is from our Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson, out of the WRAL.com newspaper and TV station. Teaching about those issues in public schools, however, is absolutely off limits. We're talking about filth, books in our schools. Those are adult topics that should stay in an adult place. They have no business around children. He said, homosexuality is not a culture. Homosexuality is a sexual preference, and sexual preferences, I believe, do not need to be discussed in our schools. Those are adult topics that should stay in an adult place. They have no business around our children. Homosexuality is not a culture. Homosexuality is a sexual preference. And sexual preferences, I believe, do not need to be discussed in our schools. So in front of me, I have Cleveland County Schools Policy Code 3205. Third paragraph down, it states, if a parent has concerns about instructional materials used in their child's classroom or school, they are directed to Policy 3210, which is parental inspection of and objection to instructional materials, which outlines the process for parents to review and object to instructional materials. And I noticed that I've been coming to these board meetings 10 out of 11, that policy was changed July 16, 2021, when I've been speaking about CRT in our schools. And I wanted to say Veterans Day is coming up this Thursday, November the 11th. I salute all veterans, their families, and I just want, to make that public that, I'm thankful for their service. And God bless you guys.
Thank you. Next is Starlina Smith.
I've been a parent of Cleveland County Schools for 16 years, 2 graduates, and I also have 2 elementary students in school. I've also been an employee of Cleveland County School for the past 9 years. I've always been very proud of Cleveland County School. On October the 19th, I received a positive COVID test. my elementary schools were out of school for 8 in-person learning days. One of those days was a remote day, not counted in that 8. On that remote day, it got me thinking, after a week of being positive with COVID, my kids didn't even have their Chromebooks at home with them to do a remote day. Nor did they bring them home every day. 4 days of my quarantine that I tested positive, I couldn't go receive their work. Had they had their Chromebooks on those days, they could have done some in-person learning or some online learning, some reading phonics and their math stuff on their computer. I understand that elementary schools don't learn as well as they do in person, obviously, but they have to do better than 8 days with no learning at all, nothing but paperwork to figure out how to do on their own, no way to look it up. My students in their self, we don't have laptops at home. I've asked the board this. I sent an email out. There's this great button that emails everybody on the board. Out of that email and those questions I got a response from Mr. Fisher and Danny Blanton. I asked these questions. I asked if our children are not doing remote learning with their Chromebooks, what was y'all's intent and understanding on our remote days? And why are elementary schools being left out? Why are they not bringing those Chromebooks home for days that they get stuck at home with someone that's tested positive? They missed 10 days. My kids also missed 3 more days after being back for 2 because my daughter also tested positive. Why are our elementary students getting left behind on this? I know our high school and our middle school, they bring their Chromebooks home. They learn well on them. But our elementary school students cannot miss 8 days of learning without some type of way to have access to learn whether it is something on there or not. And if y'all could, please answer my email. Answer the questions that I've gotten those answers from the other 2 people. I was very nervous because I am an employee here to come and speak to y'all. I shouldn't have to worry about speaking up as a parent and an employee. And I hope that it doesn't affect my job in any way. I just want our children to learn. I've been very proud of Cleveland County School, and I want to continue to be. Please take that in consideration.
Thank you. Annette Fain.
Choose to look at these or not. Did a lot of praying on my way here. Well, I'm here again. You know, 3 minutes is never enough for me. I agree with this young lady back here. I'm very disappointed in our school board. I have 3 major things to hit on tonight. I voted for the Republicans. I'm very ashamed of my Republican Party that you would stab Mr. Blanton in the back the way you have at your private meetings. You probably should look around and see who your friends really are before you start talking about putting him out. I am here to tell you, I'm one parent, but there are thousands of parents out there that feel just like me. We're like Buncombe County. We're taking our school board back, we're taking our schools back, and we're taking our kids back. Y'all work for us. We don't work for you. Mr. Blanton has done more in the last year. Dr. Fisher didn't even know the program I brought up last year. Rodney knew, Danny Blanton knew. The rest of y'all sit here like you were just bumps on a log because you didn't understand what the summer program, kids all around. Somebody lost their job because somebody got to them that was giving me information. There are teachers, I have information to packet. There is broken school benches at some of the elementary schools. Teachers can't speak out because they're afraid of losing their jobs. Y'all are a downright disgrace. a disgrace. I'm ashamed to be affiliated with the Republican Party. They say money talks in Cleveland County. Baby, we're bringing out the old money because this is it. These terms, there's 2 people on this board that'll be reelected, and I can promise you that. There's another thing that is close to my heart. I'm the mother of a gay son. A gay son that grew up here in Cleveland County and had to hide what he was. We got a boy at Burns High School that went into the boys' bathroom wearing heels, not the girls, the boys, and was videoed, and it was shared all over his school. Dr. Fisher, as our superintendent, you, sir, seek these individuals out at Burns that this parent went to. You get rid of them or we're going to get rid of you. It's plain and simple. That's your job. You work for us. Gay, straight, I don't care, black, white, green, yellow, orange. Honey, I got a multicolored family, okay? So I speak for all of us. And it's not going to be anymore this good old boy. Mr. Queen, I voted for you. But I would like to ask you, stick to your resignation. Resign tonight. We don't need you or want you anymore.
Sorry, your 3 minutes.
I will go to the news media with the rest of it.
Ronnie Grigg.
Well, I've got a couple of things here. One is the North Carolina Republican Party organizational plan, and I'm going to read from it in just a few minutes. Any registered Republican attempting to influence or influencing the outcome of an election against a Republican candidate or a Republican endorsed by the Republican Executive Committee or Legislative Caucus other than by supporting an opposing Republican candidate in a Republican primary may be declared ineligible to hold office under the state of organization at the state, district, and precinct level for party disloyalty. Now, there's more to this, but I'm not going to read that. I was going to. I'll have that available for anybody else that wants to see it. But a few weeks ago, Mr. Bailey, Dennis Bailey, Mr. Queen, Mr. Humphreys, the chairman, Mr. Allen, vice chairman, Mr. Wisnett, went to a gathering where they had 3 candidates for the Republican Party for school board that they met with, and they asked them to help them get Danny Blanton voted off the board. Now, some of these people were in the room. They were at that meeting. So, y'all were at the meeting. You know what took place. So I spoke to Mr. Bailey the next day, and he told me that he runs this board, that he's in charge of y'all, that he got you put back on the Cleveland County College Board. And I have your letter of resignation from there, and I also have a letter where you knew you wasn't getting the votes to go back on the board, but on your letter, you resigned saying that you didn't have time to be on both boards. Then, in part of the letter, it says that you want to be removed from consideration for being reappointed to the Board of Trustees. But in the other letter, you said you knew you didn't have the votes. You also said it was too much on you to be on both boards. But then within hours after that meeting on the 15th with the county commissioners, your friends Dennis Bailey and Wes Westmoreland with the college was on the phone to Ted Alexander, had Ted take the woman off that he was going to appoint and put you back on there. But yet you said you couldn't handle 2 boards. But there you are, right back on there. Now, I'm going to tell you right quick, I think
Mr. Grigg,
that
your
this
3
whole
minutes,
thing about...
your 3 minutes have expired.
It's a disgrace, and
your
you
3
guys
minutes
are a
have
disgrace.
expired. I can't give
I
you
will
more
take
time
the
without
rest of
giving
this
others
to
more
the
time.
media. I will take the rest of this to the media.
Miss Carolyn Behringer. Is she still here? There we go. See that.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Dr. Fisher and Chairman of the Board, Mr. Queen, and Mr. Members. I'm here to talk about Washington Outreach Ministry, which is a ministry that's dear to my heart, and feeding the
Could you
hungry.
pull the mic a little closer, please? Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
I'm here to talk about Washington Outreach Ministry and our event that we're going to be having, and we're going to be having this event on December the 4th, 2021. And this event is taking place at 2007 Capernia Road. We're doing this event, and we're raising $20,000, and we're doing this so that we can help keep our facility going, and this is for the overhead of our establishment. We also are doing this to help feed the hungry and to help Cleveland County schools, teachers, anybody that's living in Cleveland County. This is what we're doing this for. So I have an invitation, and I'm going to leave it here, and you all can read it at your own convenience, but please come out and help us on December the 4th with our virtual outreach ministry parade of tables. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Michael, I think the last name is Smith. I'm having a hard time. Yes, Michael Smith.
I'd like to first thank the board for allowing me to address you this evening. I'm here to address you concerning the sale of Central School in Kings Mountain. My name is Michael S. Smith. I'm a retired public school teacher. Spent my entire career in Kings Mountain teaching school, except for 2 years in Gaston County, 2 years in the military. I came back to Kings Mountain. I own property, 2 pieces of property in the historic district of Kings Mountain, right across from the Central School property. I've served on the Historic Landmarks Commission. I've served on the school, historic, the school, I've been very active. I'll be perfectly honest. I'm telling some of my friends I'm standing in line waiting for my ticket and or waiting for the trumpet to sound. But when I found out that Central School was going to be sold, I didn't find out about it until last week in the paper. I don't think the school system has given the citizens of Kings Mountain any respect, enough input into what happens to that property. And I would like you to reconsider, pull back, and respectfully give us some time in Kings Mountain to address that property and what we want to see, the citizens of Kings Mountain want to see. I mean, perfectly honest, I probably should just fold my hands and just let things go. But I think you owe it to the people of Kings Mountain to get some input before you make a decision. I don't know what the hurry is. You said on your website it's going to take 12 months to get out of the building. And why are we in such a big hurry to wash our hands of a building that's on the Historic Landmarks, National Historic Landmarks Commission, the heart of the historic district? I hope you'll certainly reconsider. Do something to give us a chance to have some input. God bless you.
Thank you. Last is, I think it's Dusty Horde. Am I reading it?
Take my 3 minutes. Just give you an update. My kids still haven't worn a mask at school. They've been called to room 101. Oh, you need to go quarantine. You've been around somebody tested positive. Nah, you going to school. You ain't staying at home. And they continue to go to school, and this China virus, they haven't caught it yet. So, I mean, quit being a puppet and do what you're supposed to do.
Thank you. Just to clarify a couple of items, and Dr. Fisher and Ms. Sink, you can correct me if I miss on any of this. As far as, it is correct, we are not medical professionals or a medical institution, and those laws are created by the General Assembly, not the school board. As far as vaccines, this board has not mandated any vaccines, and according to the law, once a child turns 16, they have a right to get the vaccine on their own. However, and hear that however, if any child asks for that, we do call their parents and check that out before we allow them to go through the clinic. So just to straighten that up, some things were said about library books and curriculum. I would bring your attention to our policies 3210 and 3210E, that if you have any concern about anything that may or may not be in the library, you can use those policies, contact the school principal, and start there. If you don't get what you need, you can contact Dr. Brian Hunnell or Dr. Fisher at our central office. And regarding the sale of Kings Mountain Central School, Kings Mountain city officials were given a chance to tour the building back in April, I think it was, April or March. But I do expect further discussion on that tonight, especially during our closed session, and we'll be making a decision one way or the other afterwards. So next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the October 11th business and closed session. There was a minor correction that went out on email this afternoon. What's the pleasure of the board? Motion by Mr. Fitch. Second by Mr. Hunt. Any questions on the minutes for October 11th? All those in favor, if you'd raise your hand. That carries 9-0. Next is approval of minutes and general account of the closed session. There was a minor correction to that one that was sent out by email. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Glover. Second by Mr. Hunt. Any further questions? All those in favor, if you raise your hand. That carries 9-0. Now we're on to committee reports, finance and personnel. That's Mr. Shores.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Finance and Personnel Committee met on Friday, October 29th at 10:30. Mr. Fisher presented the proposed new classified salary tables. Included in the proposed salary tables is a $1.25 an hour raise for all classified employees. The proposed scale includes experience bands. Employees will advance on the scale based on their experience within the district. After discussion, the committee supported the proposal and made the following recommendation for consideration for tonight's meeting. To implement the attached salary scale, providing classified employees a minimum of a $1.25 an hour raise and give the yearly experience step as outlined in the scale. If approved, the proposal would go into place with the payroll period beginning Saturday, November the 6th, and will be paid beginning with the December paycheck. Dr. Fisher provided an update on the state budget. There's still nothing tangible in regards to the budget, but information come from all indicates their sides are relatively close to a compromise. If the budget passes, the district believes salary updates will be included and the district will need to readjust salary tables. Dr. Fisher updated the committee on federal mandate concerning vaccines for Head Start employees. A survey was sent to Head Start employees. Ms. Wampler updated the committee on current vaccines. The district is seeing some significant staffing challenges, especially in the areas of preschool and classified staff. The proposed salary increases will hopefully help with some of the classified vacancies. Mr. Wampler and Dr. Fisher stated that additional adjustments were being made to the lead custodian salary scale and coaching supplements. The lead custodian tables will go into effect with the new classified tables, and the coaching supplements will be applied to this school year's coaching positions. Dr. Fisher shared the new district organizational chart and stated that the interactive chart will be added to the district website. With no new business, meeting was adjourned. The next meeting will be November 19th at 10:30 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Shores. There's 2 action items out of this. Of course, we postponed the personnel report till the end. So the first action item is the classified salary scale and the hourly rate increase. That has come from committee as a recommendation. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Blunt.
Are they going to come up with is this better, or will we be changing that $1.25 if the state comes up with that $13 and, because we was going to add to the $13 and then so on and so on. If somebody is already making $15, they would get that adjustment there. So
I can answer that question. That the salaries could change based on what the state, we are given $1.25 regardless. It could go up if the state comes.
So they're going to get the $1.25 plus to go up. Is that what you're?
No.
Dr. Fisher, would you like to elaborate on that?
Be glad to, Mr. Chair. So the proposal that you have before you tonight is to raise the salary scales for classified employees up for $1.25 per hour. So that gets all employees over $13 an hour. So if the state budget was to come and say, well, all employees are at $13 an hour, then we've already done that. Now, we don't know what the state budget is. The state budget says if it's $13 an hour or a percent, the greater of, well, we've already given the $1.25, so we would then add the percent to that, and so we would adjust again. So to answer your question, Mr. Blanton, there is a good chance that we could have to redo these salary tables again, but we're at the point where we've waited on a state budget, and we just don't feel like we can wait any longer. We need to go ahead and implement the new salary schedules. If the state comes back with something different and we have to do it again, then we'll readjust the tables again, and they'll get an additional amount. But the $1.25 is the minimum raise that they would get.
Okay, all right. My next question is, when we switched these people to the hourly pay a year or two ago, I've had many calls stating that they're making less money than what they was beforehand. So, and we were going to they would catch that back up in the next month or two. That would get caught back up, or they would see it at the end of that year. Well, I'm hearing that it did not happen. They didn't get caught back up. They did not catch it back up. And I'm hearing this from teachers, not just the classified. I know the teachers, that didn't affect the teachers, but the teachers knows about what some of them check was.
You know, I would say if a classified employee has that, we'll be glad to look at their situation, run that, but that should not have happened, assuming that they actually work the same number of hours. If they didn't work the same number of hours, there could be some differences there, you know, each individual situation, but that's not, you know, they're getting paid that hour. If they're working that, they'll get paid that. Matter of fact, you know, they may be seeing more money because of some of the employment issues, we're paying out some of the overtime, especially driving the bus, so they may actually see more of that.
Okay.
If individuals have questions, we'll be glad to help sit
Well,
down with them.
I do know there's a lot of people, they've been people that's asked questions, and they really didn't get a satisfactory answer. And I guess this, I guess that's my other question needs to wait till the personnel comes out on a sheet that we got that sent out to us. Okay.
Any other questions on the salary schedule?
I think, Mr. Quinn, one thing I would like to add and make sure it's a note, because I do think it's a point of emphasis that we need to make sure that working with the board, the Personnel Finance Committee, and getting feedback from the board, we have banded that salary schedule. And now, for the first time ever, those classified employees will move up on experience regardless of what the state does. So, you know, I'm working and I'm in 0 to 4, and then when I move to year 5, I'm going to get that raise. And in the past, you've not moved up on that salary schedule or the experience schedule unless the state get a raise. So, you know, we're going to move those employees up along that, which is really a benefit for our classified employees.
Any other questions on the salary schedule?
does that include, like, some of our TAs and stuff, they drive the bus? In other words, is that dollar raise that they got here a while back, that took care of that situation, is that correct?
This is $1.25 for everybody with the current, so the dollar raise that the bus drivers got, several months ago, that reestablished their scale, and then we've gone $1.25 over that. So you've got a
So
copy.
the bus drivers are gonna get another $1.25, is that correct?
All classified folks, and you've got the copy of the salary
Right.
schedules. All people
Right.
that are on that classified scale will get that $1.25 hour
Okay.
raised.
One more time. All right, any further questions? All right, all those in favor of the classified salary scale as presented, if you'd raise your hand. And that carries 9-0. And personnel is postponed to the end. Educational programs. Mr. Hunt, I believe you're going to share that for us tonight.
The Educational Programs Committee met on Friday, October the 29th at 10:30. Paula Peeler, the Director of Office of School Readiness, presented the minutes and budget information from the August and September Head Start Policy Council meeting. The minutes included enrollment information. Head Start is close to full enrollment. Head Start still needs to hire 4 teaching assistants and 3 teachers. The committee recommended board approval of the Head Start budget at tonight's board meeting. Gina Gold, MTSS coordinator, provided an overview of the NC Star online platform. Each school has 2 documents in their NC Star folder system. The first document is a PDF of each school's NC Star plan, including the mission, vision, goals, and action steps. Mrs. Gold explained the layout of each school's plan. Each plan includes key indicators, an initial assessment, what it will look like when the indicator is fully implemented, and the action steps that will be taken to meet full implementation. The second document has school improvement team members, the leadership team members, the parent advisory council members, and parent representatives. The school improvement plan vote date and count is also included and required by law. School improvement plans are included on tonight's board agenda. Mr. Humphreys spoke about the district's social media curriculum. The committee looked at the Log Off Character Ed curriculum, but it's still in development. Common Sense Media, in addition to school-selected resources, is what we are currently using in our schools. This is also being discussed in the Safety Committee, and a letter will be sent out for the district to make parents aware of the concerns regarding social media. Cleveland County Schools is looking at hosting a parent university session regarding social media. The meeting was adjourned, and the next meeting date is scheduled for November the 19th at 10:30.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. There are 2 action items out of the Educational Programs Committee. First is the Head Start report, and that is coming from committee recommendation for approval. Those are the August and September reports. Are there any questions or discussion? Mr. Lane?
On the school improvement.
Hold on, we're on the
okay.
Head Start reports first.
All right.
Anything on the Head Start reports? All right, those in favor of the Head Start reports as presented, if you'd raise your hand. And that carries 9-0. All right, on the school improvement plan, Mr. Blanton?
Yes. I've had a few calls that we're not getting the word out to the parents. In other words, by my understanding, it goes by the size of a school. Correct me if I'm wrong. It goes on the size of the school, and that is percentage. There's supposed to be a percentage of parents to be on that team, and they're supposed to be outside of that school. So maybe the parents from that school, but like teachers is from the outside and everything. And I'm wondering, are we reaching out to these parents to get them on these teams, and then they're just not getting involved? Or what are we doing to try to get these parents involved and to be a part of these teams? If we're wanting the parents' involvement, then I think we need to be reaching out to them to get it. And by my understanding, it's so much, they go on the percentage of blacks, whites, or whatever, you're supposed to have a percentage be represented by parents on those improvement teams. I hope I said that well enough to where you understand it.
Yes, Dr. Fisher, putting you on the spot again, would you like to explain that process, you or Dr. Hunnell? Not both of you at one time.
Mr. Blanton, I'm not aware of any concerns, and I'm not sure from our instructional team if we've had any concerns from parents or schools. This is a process, a long-standing process that we've had. If you look at those plans, look at that information, there are parent representatives. I believe the law doesn't give a specific percentage. It does say that it should reflect the student population. And you know, obviously a student population that's larger than a small school would have more parent representatives or could have more parent representatives on there. But there's not a certain, doesn't say 5% or 10% in there. I'm not aware of any concerns or nothing's been expressed to us about parental engagement involvement there. I do think our schools, through our Title I departments, spend a lot of time on parental involvement, parental engagement. You know, whether it's through parent-teacher conferences or Title I events, all those type of things. I would encourage anyone that wants to be a part of the school improvement process, our school improvement team, if they'll reach out to their school administrator, if they'll reach out directly to Dr. Hunnell, we'll make sure we get them connected in with the right people on that school improvement team as a part of the planning process. We do want parental engagement, we want parental involvement. That's an important part of what we're doing. Parents are huge stakeholders in this process for the education of the students and children of Cleveland County. So if someone has those concerns, definitely reach out to the school principal or Dr. Hunnell, and we'll make sure we loop them in on school improvement team meetings. If parents or community members want to go to the school websites, those school improvement team meetings are publicized on that website. Have those options to do that.
Any other questions on the school improvement plans? All right, those in favor of the school improvement plans as presented, if you'd raise your hand. And that carries 9-0. Next, we have operations. The Operations Committee met on Friday, October 29th. Hamilton Court with McMillan, Padsden, and Smith was at the meeting to provide an update on the district's facility assessment. MPS provided a sample of school and district information that was coming from their assessments. The assessments in Shelby and Kings Mountain zones have been completed. MPS also updated the committee on the demographer's work, and we expect them to be on the agenda again at our November committee meeting, and we expect some recommendations from that soon. Ms. Wampler and Mr. Childers provided the October capital projects report, and we discussed the increasing cost of materials and maintenance and transportation. Not only is the district seeing some significant increases in cost of material, we're having a difficult time getting some parts and materials, and child nutrition is also experiencing challenges in getting some of the normal products. Ms. Brown provided a child nutrition update, and we discussed the nutrition and finance team, the nutrition and finance teams have worked on a plan for the ESSER money. Some of those ESSER funds are restricted to bonuses for child nutrition employees, and it can only be spent on bonuses and only for child nutrition employees. So we discussed that, and the committee supported Ms. Brown's recommendation for those bonuses. Also had some surplus items from child nutrition that we'll be voting on shortly. Mr. Weiss provided a technology update and noted that technology deliveries were also delayed. Mr. Weiss commented on the technology and the staff development area and the plans to upgrade that technology. Mr. Pless informed the committee that Kings Mountain Intermediate field lighting by the city of Kings Mountain was complete, and the project looks good and is already in use. As you'll recall, we exchanged that for the property just to the north of Kings Mountain Intermediate. The city of Kings Mountain put those lights in exchange for that. As a matter of new business, Ms. Wamper informed the committee that there would be a CMTA kickoff meeting on Friday, November the 5th, and that's with our heating and air programs for the high schools. With no other business, the meeting was adjourned. Next Operations Committee meeting is scheduled for November 19th at 9 a.m. And we have a couple of items for action. First is the child nutrition surplus items. Committee is recommending approval. Any questions or discussion? All in favor of listing those items as surplus, if you'd raise your hand. That carries 9-0. There are some CTE surplus items in your packet. We did not have those in time to discuss for committee, so I will need a motion and second from the board should you wish to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hunt, second by Mr. Glover. Any question on those items? All right, those in favor of the CTE surplus items, if you'd raise your hand. And that carries 9-0. And the surplus properties are moved to the end. Next is our policy committee. And Mr. Shores, I think you're handling that one too.
Yes. Policy Committee met on October 19th at noon. Dr. Fisher began the meeting with a discussion on Policy 7230 from the old manual. The policy is not required and is not needed in the new manual. The new manual already contains a policy that covers parent organizations and booster clubs. The committee recommended moving forward with retiring the policy. Dr. Fisher highlighted that this was the last remaining untouched policy in the old manual. There are several pending board actions, but after November, the transition to the new manual should be complete. At that time, the new manual will be moved to board docs. Dr. Fisher and Ms. Sink reviewed proposed changes to Policy 4150. The changes focus on removing board action on initial transfer decisions. Transfer decisions will be handled through the superintendent's office, and her board will receive a monthly notification for their information. Any appeals to administrative decisions will come to the board. The committee feels that this is a cleaner and more effective way of handling transfer requests. This process will be used for all transfers regardless of whether it's an initial transfer, mid-year transfer, or reassignment. Dr. Fisher and Ms. Sink will clean up some of the language and the modifications to the policy on tonight's agenda for first read. As part of new business, the committee discussed the district academic freedom and parental inspection 3205 of any objection to instructional materials policy 3210. Both of these policies are in the new manual. Policy 3210 has specific guidelines related to instructional materials. The committee reiterated the need for the use of grade and age appropriate instructional materials in all classes that directly supported high quality instruction for students. Materials used should be support student learning and be tied to curricular objectives. With no other new business, the next policy committee meeting will be November 16th at 12 noon.
Thank you, Mr. Shores. You have one policy for first read, and that is 4150. Again, that's on our website under board docs. You'll be able to find the changes in red should anyone from the public like to see that. Then we have several policies for approval. And bear with me while I read these into the minutes. So these policies are recommended for approval. 1710, 4020, 7230. It's discrimination and harassment prohibited by federal law. 3120R is video usage in classrooms. 3210E, request for reconsideration of instructional material. 3226 and 4205E is parental request to deny access to the internet. 3230, 7330 is copyright compliance. 3460 is graduation requirements. 4040, 7310, staff and student relations. 4125 is homeless students. 4240, 4312 is child abuse. 4335 is criminal behavior. 4700R is maintenance, review, and release of student records. 6320 is use of student transportation services. 7720 is employee political activities. And 8341 is limited claim settlement. All those come from committee as a recommendation for approval. Are there any questions or discussion on any of those policies? All right, all those in favor for those policies as presented, if you raise your hand. And that carries 9-0. Safety Committee, Mr. Fitch.
Mr. Chairman, the Safety Committee met on October the 27th at 12 o'clock. David Pless updated the community on the traffic concerns at Crest Middle. Mr. Pless presented a handful of potential options, but every situation presented other challenges, including cost. One of the problems is the intersection at Crest Road and Beaver Dam Church Road. At the request of the committee, Mr. Pless will reach out to the Department of Transportation about that intersection. Mr. Borders provided an overview of the school resource officer meeting the past week and highlighted the excellent work being provided by our school resource officers. Greg Scholl and Sandy Hamrick were a part of the school resource officer meeting and echoed Mr. Borders' comments. Greg Scholl reported information on the school safety plan updates and the ongoing status of the Code Red drills that are required each year. As of the meeting, about one-half of the schools had already completed their drills and the others were scheduled for the upcoming weeks. Sandy Hamrick spoke about the ongoing mental health concerns present in our schools and community. The committee discussed the serious nature of the mental health and noted the need for structure and support to be placed for students, staff, and community members. Dr. Fisher reminded the committee about yearly reporting of suspensions and dropout data. The information is found on the DC DPI website. The 2020-2021 data for schools collected by the NC DPI should be available in January or February of 2022. As a matter of new business, Lieutenant Daniel Howell expressed concerns over students sending and receiving inappropriate messages and pictures via social media and internet. The committee discussed several strategies to bring additional awareness to students and parents of the dangers and possibly criminal consequences of such actions. Sandy Hamrick will work with the school counselors and social workers to involve resource officers in sessions and increasing awareness and education. Additional strategies including parent university, community information sessions, and additional parental communication was discussed. In addition, the committee discussed security for outside events such as football games in the county. Lieutenant Howell will work on this with Mr. Pless on the planning. I asked them for an update about the cameras and interest for the elementary schools and our bullying prevention task force. Dr. Fisher reported that the camera work is ongoing. However, there has been delays in getting equipment. Technology equipment has been severely impacted by the supply chain issues. Mr. Borders reported that the bully prevention task force is scheduled to meet in November. With no other business, the meeting was adjourned. The next safety committee meeting is scheduled for November 17th at 12 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Fitch. And there are no action items out of the Safety Committee. Next, we have an administrative update, and that's the COVID update. Dr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, do have a brief COVID update. I think I said that one night, and it was 63 minutes. I promise you it won't be 63 minutes tonight to go through our COVID numbers. So a couple things that you are accustomed to seeing. You've got this data in front of you as well. Here is an active COVID case count. This, if you remember from previous conversations, this data is pulled on Monday and Friday. There may be a few days where it's pulled on a Tuesday instead of a Monday, but we've definitely pulled that on board meeting Monday, so you've got the most accurate active case count. This is not a cumulative number. It's not a number that you can go through and add up and say, well, all those active positives you had, you know, a sum of that column, those are active cases on that day. So if an active positive, you may show up on 2 of those dates because it's still ongoing as an active case. So as of Friday, November 5th, we had 28 active positive cases and 77 active contacts. I did lay just an updated sheet at your spot with numbers from today from the health department. And this information is generated through our school nurses and health department partners. As of at the end of the day today, we had 21 active positives and 84 active contacts. You can see where that data is. Continue to look, and this is the same data that you've seen in a chart form, in a graph form. You can see as we started school, we had a spike there in September. And looking at mid of September, starting as we end in September, we've started to see that data continue to go down. And this graph, just like the chart that you saw, has the data as of the end of the week, last week on November 5th. It does not include the data from today. So that is the active cases of positives. In this, you see a very similar looking graph, active contacts. With that, I can't emphasize enough of the great job that's being done in our schools, from our school administrators, our teachers, our assistants, our custodians, bus drivers. Everybody in our schools is doing just a phenomenal job to help control and limit the number of COVID positives and the spread. As you can see, not just the positives have gone down, but those contacts have gone down, and that is a large part of the work that's being done in our schools. Our school staffs have just done a phenomenal job of working through that, educating our parents and community, and so it has been a tremendous team effort to continue to drive those numbers in a positive direction. We'll continue to emphasize school-based practices, including cleaning of high-touch areas and high-traffic areas. Just as a reminder that all passengers and drivers of school transportation must wear a face covering mask at all times. That comes from at the federal level from the CDC. We continue to need good parental partners and parental assistance. Please don't send students to school if they are symptomatic or awaiting test results. I think that message is communicated, and I really just appreciate our parents. They have been wonderful through this process in terms of making sure communicating with the school and not doing that, and making sure that we try to keep each other as safe as possible. Continue to have information posted on our website, including parent information forms and flowchart for quarantines. I think it was our board meeting in September that we introduced that, which started the school year. There seemed to be lots of confusions about what were quarantines, what were not quarantines, and a lot of misinformation. And so working with the health department, they put those charts out, and I thought that was a very positive thing. So one of the things, as our numbers continue to drive into a positive direction, we've had feedback on some areas that we can continue to make our schools better and provide better opportunities for our students. So beginning this week and into November, our schools will begin to utilize cafeteria spaces for breakfast and lunch. Some of our schools are using their cafeteria spaces in a really limited capacity, but that capacity will start to quicken. We're not going to, and we'll be meeting with principals tomorrow, and one of the things I'm going to tell principals is don't just start using the cafeteria open on full bore on Wednesday. It's a process we need to get in there, but we need to begin to utilize our cafeteria spaces for breakfast and lunch more. I think that'll be a welcome thing for our staff members, but I also know our students need that interaction. Things that we'll consider: seating charts when applicable, the capacity of the cafeteria, and appropriate staffing. And so we'll work with those with our principals to make sure that will be an integrated process. Again, we're just not going to, on Wednesday ring the bell and everybody go to the cafeteria. There'll be a process through that, and we'll work with our schools. Instructional activities such as field trips will begin to be considered based on safety protocols and educational value. We've really tried to limit those things, and as our numbers have gone down, the numbers have gone down in our community, we understand that's a valuable part of the instructional program. And so we really want to look at those, at the safety protocols, things that we can put in place, and also the educational value that lends itself to. There's again lots of things from an intellectual development, but also a social and emotional development that we need for our students. As always, Cleveland County Schools will continue to monitor the COVID impact of activities and make appropriate adjustments as necessary. If we introduce some of these strategies and the numbers and trend goes in the negative direction, we can always pull back. If we begin to use our cafeterias more and we start to see some negative impacts, we can always pull that back a little bit as we need it. But I believe it's time to do that in many of our areas. We do get questions about booster shot availability from an employee and a staffing perspective, and we are working with the health department to have a Cleveland County Schools day for booster shot availability. But if folks have questions about that, obviously there's lots of places they can go get a booster shot. That is their choice, but we will work with the health department to have a day where employees can do that. Again, just some information, and you've seen this information before about COVID contacts, quarantining, mask wearing, that information is not new. So I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you may have in terms of our COVID practices, our numbers, and things that we're doing in our schools.
Any questions for Dr. Fisher? Mr. Blanton?
I got one question or two, or I don't know, might have three. I get in trouble when I go to asking questions by what I've been told, but we went on a school visit today, and I just don't feel, I love the school visit, and seen a lot of exciting things and a lot of things going on, but if our parents and our grandparents cannot go, I don't feel like we should be going to those schools as a group, and I want to make a motion that we don't go until we open the doors back up to the parents and the grandparents for us as a group. I'd like to make a motion on that to bring that before the board, that we do not do that until we open the doors back up to the parents and grandparents, because it's not right for us keeping them locked out and then we're going in as groups. Don't get me wrong, I love to go because I enjoy seeing, but I'm looking at.
Before I entertain a second, I'll let Dr. Fisher speak to what our policy is as far as visitors right now.
And I think personally, my opinion is that the school board visits today were good. I think it's great that we began to work in that process. I think it's good for board members to get into schools and see what's going on. I think for the most part, you were able to social distance from students. We weren't sitting that close. I think we do have students and do have parents in our buildings. We have parents that come to IEP meetings. We have parents that come to 504 meetings. We have parents that come to parent conferences with teachers or employees. Parent-teacher conference back in October. We did primarily do that from a remote day, but that was, again, several weeks ago in October. We did have options for parents to come in and do that. I think the big area in terms of that haven't opened yet is really lunch. For parents to come in and have lunch with their child, and because primarily up to this point we've been having lunch in the classroom, and that's been very difficult to manage. I do think it is very different from people going in for it's a meeting or a school visit versus having lunch in the cafeteria sitting around other students from an adult perspective. But I respectfully will entertain the wishes of the board. But we are, parents can come in schools, parents can do those things. We are having, meetings and conferences and those type of things in our schools. We have not opened it up for lunch yet for several reasons, one of which primarily is the fact that for the most part, we're eating, lunch in our classrooms at this point.
Okay, so as I understand, there's no policy, no rule that we're limiting parents other than like lunchtime, lunch buddy sort of thing.
That is the primary time where parents come in. Again, we do have some online IEP meetings. We've had some online 504 meetings. We've had some online meetings, and sometimes that meets the need of parents. But a parent has wanted to come in to meet with the teacher, wanted to come in and meet with an IEP team, our administrator. That's something that they can do.
Okay.
We continue, as we open and we continue to move in this process, we can continue to reiterate that to the administrators to make sure these options are open for parents if they choose they want to do that.
All right, Mr. Blanton has a motion on the floor. It's a proper motion, but I don't know what we would change. It doesn't sound like we have any policies or rules to limit parent attendance. So do you want to let the motion stand on the floor?
I want to let the motion stand because I'm hearing from parents that they're not getting to go.
Well, all right.
And
Before we go any further, we got to have, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
All right, second by Mr. Fitch. Any questions or discussion?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Have there been cases where we have actually told parents they cannot come to the school? That you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, unless it's for lunch or something like that. Now, it could be class activities, that type of thing, but for a meeting, I'm not aware of those.
Meeting.
I understand exactly what
Hold on. We need everyone in the audience to be quiet. I'm trying to listen. We're all trying to listen and get all the information so we can make a proper decision. So we've had public participation. You're welcome to call any of us afterwards or be here next time. Thank you.
And I agree with it. Just the way the motion is formed, if someone wants me as a board member to come and look at something in a school, basically what your motion just says is all board members will stay out of schools.
No, I really needed to bring that up. If somebody needed a board member to come, or especially with these committees, and one needs to go check something out, that's a different, you're not going as a group, as a crowd in there. So let me just add that in there to it. If a board member needs to go due to our job, that's another thing. But, the committee, going to visit is our job in a sense.
I see Ms. Sink standing up. Would you mind coming to the podium, please?
I think the discussion is great, but we can't technically add anything to the motion until we vote on the motion as it stands.
All right.
That's why I was concerned, because the way that came out, if I show up at a school tomorrow and get videoed or something like that, then obviously.
Okay.
I took it that the motion only applied to school visits.
As a group, well, I'm just going by how
Yeah.
it's written down.
Okay.
I mean, the motion was, no, say it again. What was the motion?
All right, my motion was that I didn't feel that we should be going on school visits as long as we was keeping the parents and stuff out. That's my motion, because we're going as groups. And basically that would cover, that wouldn't be like if you went to a school and checked. It's our school visits. And don't get me wrong, I like going on the school visits, but if we're going to keep the parents out.
Well, I just think it's a good idea for us to stay out, period, too, until parents can go in, regardless if it's groups or whatever, and that's kind of what I consider.
All right.
It just don't look good to me.
Can I make
Mr.
a
Glover.
motion to amend his motion?
We'll see. Go ahead.
I make a motion that we suspend school visits for the board until we re-examine it the first meeting. Schedule school visits on Monday. Is that what you were basically?
I think that's what I think that's the same thing.
By the board as a group.
Board as a group on school visits.
Okay.
For the scheduled board visits on Monday morning.
Okay, just want to make sure I was.
Okay, so what is your amendment changing?
I'm just trying to clear it up just a little bit. I might have made it.
Well, I said the same thing.
Well, in my opinion, I think you said the same thing as far as school visits, so I don't think the amendment's necessary if that sounds.
All right.
Yeah.
Chairman Queen, I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but maybe if I'll just state the motion as I understood it.
That would be wonderful.
That we will suspend school visits by board members as a group until parents are allowed to enter the school property for social purposes.
Okay. That's clear enough as I
Is that
understood.
the intent?
I would add the word schedule.
Does that apply to operational committee meeting? If there's a need for the members of the board,
That don't apply to that.
but if it's as a board in a group, needs to be a little different wording there, because if you and I and Robert as a committee need to attend a facility with Dr. Fisher and maintenance staff to look at a problem, we're going in as a group. So we need to, if we need to do that, I don't disagree with you either, but we need to clarify however we can do that.
Okay.
And I guess the email that got sent out the other night where y'all had a schedule of these board members are on Team Wampler, these are on Team Hunnell, that alone is what we're talking about, that those
the
visits.
scheduled school visits.
The scheduled school visits will be suspended.
Mr. Hunt.
Yeah, we're on a lot of committees right now. Not a lot of committees, but we got different members on different committees, and we've got new board members that are actually trying to listen and ask questions in these committee meetings to find out what's going on in the various schools as far as educational programs and things that they're doing for remediation. Yeah, today was a good example of the things that are going on in the school. We had a chance to meet with that administrative team and to visit a couple of classrooms. We didn't go in every classroom, but we got enough to have a snapshot of what was going on, the remediation that was going on, how they were catching students up from this COVID era. What they're doing at Springmore, is fabulous. I feel like they're on point. They understand what they need to be doing, and from my understanding, everybody's on board. The administrative team didn't emphasize that enough. And now we're saying that, the board's not a full board going into any school. We're cutting that in half. And everybody on my team had masks on. So I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we eliminate that. We go in there once a month at the various, we don't go to the same schools. We rotate it. But it's enough to at least give us a snapshot. And we are getting back into the schools. Schools are getting back into the swing of things. Things are looking up. We're not there yet. And we got to start opening up a few things, and I think those board visits are important, especially for the new ones that haven't been in that rotation and been able to go into different schools just to see what's going on.
Mr. Humphries, do you have anything? Okay. Ms. Green, I want to give you opportunity. Do you have anything?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr.
The only, I agree with Mr. Hunt. I think it's very important for us to get into the schools. But I think it's also important that we go into the schools at the right time. I'm going to look at it on a different way. I'm looking at it on the teacher's view. That I heard some conversation and some talk from some teachers is there's one more thing on my plate that I got to change something or entertain the board. One more thing. And in the conversation with the teachers, this year has been more difficult than last year. So if we can eliminate one thing that's on their plate, I'm for it. And I think for us to go to that school, I know it's just once a month, but it's going to affect some teachers and some administrators that we're putting one more thing on their plate. So I would be in favor of suspending it right now.
All right, I think everyone's had a chance to speak. I guess I just have trouble with the motion because it says it will stop scheduled visits until parents are allowed back in the school. And I don't see where we're not allowing parents in other than for lunchtime. I think that's not a critical thing, but for meetings, and I believe any parent, if they called the principal, would be able to schedule a meeting to get in that school and take care of whatever they need to get taken care of.
We're not also not doing volunteers right now, classroom volunteers. And so that's where I think somebody may have said volunteers. So the effort is to try to make sure we keep our classrooms as safe as possible and do that. But we felt like we could bring, do a board visit with that and do that safely. But again, it's really, discretion of the board, not a.
Any further questions or discussion on suspending board visits?
Maybe amend the motion to put a date on it until.
Can that motion be amended?
Yeah, it can be amended.
Well, let me just try to clarify, and that way, I would like to amend that motion that we suspend all scheduled board meetings to schools until January, and at January's meeting, we revisit the scheduling of school board meetings at schools.
Okay, so we won't do December and we won't do January because January would happen the day of the meeting.
Right, we revisit it in January to see where we stand with everything.
All right, we've got an amendment on the floor. Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second.
So you're seconding. Any questions or discussion on the amendment?
I'm going to beat this dog down the road. Can we take the word away, school board meetings at the school? Because it's not really, it's not a meeting, it's a visit.
Scheduled visits.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't want them to think we're meeting. Thank you.
And it's all about wording, because if somebody reads the minutes 100 years from now, I just want it,
They'll come
I don't
get you.
want some school board member running in a school and then, you voted. Yeah, I hope everybody understands what I'm saying.
Okay, we have an amendment to the motion, which is putting a date on it. It'll be suspended until January, and we'll revisit it. I think it's January 10th, is that right?
I believe so.
Any questions on the amendment part? All right, so just to explain, we'll have to vote on the amendment. If that passes, that modifies the motion, then we'll have to vote on the motion as modified. So we'll have two votes here. All right, those in favor of the amendment, which puts a date on it of January 10th, if you'd raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any opposed? So that amendment carries 6-3. So now the motion before the board is to suspend scheduled school visits until January 10th, and we'll revisit as a board that evening. That's a paraphrased. Everybody got that? All right. Those in favor of the motion as amended, if you'd raise your hand. Those opposed? That also carries 6-3. All right, any other questions on Dr. Fisher's COVID material? And again, per Senate Bill 654, we're required to vote on mask or not each month. So we either need a motion to continue or a motion to change something.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that
Mr. Fitch?
we move to completely optional with our mask.
I second that motion.
Got to be able. All right, before we do the second, so your motion is to go back to optional on the mask.
Completely optional during instructional hours.
Okay.
And doing away with the exemption forms.
Okay. Do you have a start date?
Now.
And let me ask Dr. Fisher if he can recommend a start date. What do you need staff-wise? Is there any preparation?
I think, Mr. Chair, that there needs to be communication to parents. Obviously, some parents will, or maybe here tonight, maybe watching the meeting, but there will be a lot of parents that don't have that information until their child goes to school tomorrow. And then you're putting a child in a situation of, well, is mask optional? What does my parent tell me to do? I think it needs an opportunity to clearly communicate that. So I would say at the earliest, if the board approves that motion, at the earliest would start Wednesday. My recommendation would be to start Monday because we do have Thursday as a holiday. So if you start at Wednesday, then you got Wednesday, then you got holiday, then you have Friday. I just think for good and efficient operations of the school, with over 2,000 employees, with over 14,000 plus students, plus pre-K, all the different moving parts, I feel like it's fair that we communicate that and make sure that parents have the option of communicating to their child what their parental expectations are for those children going to school, and not put that child in that situation on Tuesday morning without some parental input. So I would recommend, my recommendation, if that's the direction that the board wants to go, my recommendation would be beginning next Monday, but I think at the earliest next Wednesday would just give us, obviously one day to.
Meaning this coming Wednesday?
Yeah.
2 days. Would you like to add a date to your motion?
We'll go with November 15th, which will be next Monday. Give the school time.
All right, and second.
Well, I've got a question first.
Well, let's get a second.
Well, I might give you the second just as soon as I ask my question. I'm still his people's choice completely, 100%. And I've been that way from the very get-go. Is that meaning the same thing that he's saying? Is that meaning what he said?
That's what
Is
I
that meaning
understand
the same
optional
thing?
means.
Okay, because I'm sticking to my gun on people's choice.
Do you want to second the motion, or is anyone?
Yes, I'll second it then if it's the people's choice.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to change the mask requirement back to optional Everything else stays in place, like Dr. Fisher and his staff, as we did in the very first motion, is responsible for the day-to-day COVID operations, if you will. This will not change anything on the school buses because that falls under the federal requirements and we just don't have any authority there. So the CDC still requires mask wearing on public transportation. That's your understanding, Ms. Sam? Okay. So that's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Green?
I got a question. Now, if you were to go total optional, is that gonna mean we're gonna still have more quarantine because nobody has masks now, so the quarantine numbers?
Well, no, they can wear it if they want to wear it.
I'm sorry. I said without having masks on, does that mean that the quarantine numbers will go a different approach? Because now, like 2 masked people, nobody quarantined, so will that mean our quarantine numbers will be going back up and more kids will be missing school?
Possibly. You know, if you go mask optional, then you have less people wearing masks. You still may have 2 people wearing masks, and so a mask and 2 masks means you do not have to quarantine. But if you have one of those 2 folks without a mask, then you have a quarantine, so quite possibly.
Dr. Fisher, how does that apply to kids that are vaccinated and not vaccinated?
Vaccinated students do not have to quarantine, but they have to wear a mask when they come back if they don't test. So it's my understanding that that's not an option. That would be a mandate that if I'm vaccinated, I'm a close contact, I do not have to quarantine because I've been vaccinated, but for me not to quarantine, I must wear a mask or have a negative test. So I think that would, the mask optional would not really impact that because I could still stay in school, but I'd have to wear a mask, so I would not because I was vaccinated. That's one we would definitely, whatever the board votes, run through our health department to make sure. But I think that the vaccination status, you don't have to quarantine, but you do have to wear a mask until you either test negative or continue that 14-day period.
So, okay, so just to add to that, people's choice, I agree. You don't want to be vaccinated, don't get vaccinated. But if you want to be vaccinated and it's your choice. We're just now able to have kids 5 through 11 to get that vaccination. All right, so we're saying we're gonna go no mask till on what'd you say, November 15th. So does the county allow, are we able to kids 5 through 11 who choose to get vaccinated? Again, I'm going to reiterate that, who choose to get vaccinated. I know there's folks that don't agree with it, and by all means, you can agree with however you want. But if we can allow the kids that want to get vaccinated, give them a certain window to where you get at least one vaccination, if you have to get 2, that we prolong the mask long enough to give these folks time to get vaccinated, if they choose. That's my. I'm gonna turn my mic off.
Yeah, the quarantine rules are the same. Again, those are not decided by the school board. That's the CDC and others. So the quarantine rules remain. It is a possibility that with less mask, you could have more quarantines. And I'm getting there. And as far as vaccines, I believe it has been approved for younger. That's up to the families with parental consent. They can go do that. And as I understand, you were talking about delaying long enough to give them more time to get there.
Yeah.
But did you make that in the form of a motion or an amendment, or just giving your opinion at this time? I want to make sure I didn't miss an amendment in there.
I would like to make that into a form of amendment to the motion to prolong the mask mandate as mandatory with exemptions for a certain amount of time, for whether it's 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever, to
You'll
allow.
have to give me a date.
Okay.
Well, vaccine isn't fully effective until 2 weeks after the second shot.
2 weeks
So
after the
unless
second.
unless you're gonna do it 2 weeks after the second shot, it doesn't make a difference if you do it or not.
I didn't know if you were going to finish an amendment. The floor is yours.
I know, I'm thinking.
Can I say one thing else?
Yes, ma'am.
I think our numbers are really doing good, but I think they're doing good for a reason, because we're doing the right things. But I also know that they're expecting a surge over the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, so I don't know if you want to take that into consideration or not.
While Mr. Taylor's
No,
thinking on
I just, that's my opinion. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
I guess the only thing I have to say is, it was just a few weeks ago that the county commissioners were asking us to limit the number of people that come to our, any kind of sport events because of COVID, and we didn't do that. But it's kind of, just kind of trying to look from the outside. We made a vote, and it passed just a few minutes ago, that we're not going to do school visits, mainly because of safety issues for us to be in the school. But now we got a motion to get rid of masks, which relates to safety. So it's kind of a little confusing. That one way we're really looking at the safety, and we don't want to be in there, we don't want to expose the kids, we got to be careful. And then on the other hand, we're going to make a motion to just wipe it away, and it's optional. People do have a choice. My whole concern is, I want to make sure these students are in class, and I don't want to be quarantined. Like the young lady was up here talking about her kids, they missed a lot of days of school, instructional hours that they cannot get back because of being quarantined. And that's concerning that we're losing that. And I would like to see it extended just a little bit, not being so quick on it, just to see. At least give it to the end of the semester and switch at the end of the semester to do that.
Any further comments, Mr. Glover?
No.
Anyone else? Mr. Shores?
Yeah. I'd like to make a comment. I was the one that made the motion to require them. And I stated that at that time, the reason I did that was I wanted kids in school. We had there's something we can't control. That's the health department and their quarantine guidelines. Do I like them? No. But I made that motion, and I think I said once the numbers got down, I'm in favor of making it optional. And a couple of things that I think is saying that then, now, and a couple other things is, I don't know if y'all have seen the email today about the nasty mask that some kids are wearing. But I just want to read something I got from a teacher, and it's probably more in the elementary schools. They don't really wear them anyway. When they eat, they use them to wipe their mouths and get ketchup and taco sauce all over them, which is all really nasty. They're really not wearing them. So I don't know if they're wearing them in class anyway. And I don't know if we're making matters worse, because when we first started this, I did some research about some tests that were done on masks and all the germs and diseases and stuff that were in the mask that would cause. And now that our numbers are down, I always hear the number 5%. I think that's the number that the county's at, but if we are going to keep masks on kids until COVID goes away, we're going to keep them on kids forever. It's not going away. So the vaccine's there. Yeah, they may be a surge. If we get a surge, we have to revisit this thing every month. And I'm willing to revisit it. But right now, with the numbers the way they are, and And the message I'm getting from the teachers is becoming a distraction. Kids aren't learning. Every time they turn around, the mask is off. We got to do what's best for the kids and their learning, and I think the mask is really causing more problems than it really is doing good right now. That's just what I was saying.
All right, I think everyone's had a chance to, Mr. Hunt?
Just one thing in rebuttal. When I was at Springmore today, I didn't see any of that. All the kids had their mask on. Teacher didn't have any problem with kids. She didn't have to correct any of them that were wearing masks, and I was in several classrooms, and I didn't see any of that.
I was in the school system for 4 years, and when the school board was coming, it got cleaned, everything was in order. So what you saw today ain't always necessarily what's going to be there every day.
Hey,
All right.
I've got a question now.
Hold on, the motion,
I've got a question.
all right.
Yeah, you allowed the others. I know a school, they prepared for 2 weeks that we was coming today. They thought we was coming last week.
That's not a question, it has nothing to do with the
Well,
code
but
discussion.
the comment is sort of joined up with Mr. Shores.
The motion.
You didn't shut him up, so why are you shutting me?
Because you're out of order. You're talking about
Did he stop any of them? Attorney, please.
There's a motion on the floor to go mask optional on November 15th. It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or discussion on the topic at hand? All right, I'm calling for a vote. Those in favor of the motion as presented, if you'd raise your hand. That's 5. Those opposed? Motion carries 5-4. Let's see, next, I believe we have student transfer requests. Dr. Fisher, I think you can sit down if you like. You've got the student transfer requests in your packet, recommended by the administration. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve student transfer request.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Mr. Hunt, second by Mr. Taylor. Those in favor of the student transfer request as presented, if you'd raise your hand. That carries 9-0. Board member comments. Mr. Fitch?
I've already made my comments.
No. Mr. Shores? Mr. Blank?
I'll let it by right tonight.
Ms. Green? Mr. Taylor? All right, do we have a,
I changed my mind. I decided I wanted to say something. I think we need to go back to 2 meetings a month for the public. Because this is getting ridiculous of all we have to do in 1 meeting. And we need to be transparent to our people. That's all I got to say.
I'd like to thank the folks at Springmore that had us in for a visit today. I did enjoy that. Mr. Hunt, Mr. Glover, and I, we did get to see a lot of good things going on. I appreciate their hospitality and having us, and look forward to when we pick those back up. We have 3 items for closed session. Mr. Shores, you have a motion for closed session?
Make a motion, we enter closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-313.11, subsections A3 and A6 to discuss confidential personnel matters, and also
Please add section A1 to that.
A1 to consult with the attorney for a legal opinion on options with property.
And we got a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor, if you'd raise your hand. And that carries. All right. We'll go to Fitch. Second by Mr. Hunt. Those in favor of returning to open session? Carries. During closed session, we discussed three items. We heard some advice from our attorney on the surplus properties. We discussed a confidential student matter, and we discussed a few items on the personnel report. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have our surplus properties. We'll do the Grover property first. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion that we go ahead with it.
Accept the bid.
Yes.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitch. Any further questions on the Grover property? Just to clarify, we're accepting bid. I think the bid was at 49,000 even. So we're accepting the bid of 49,000 even. Should it be approved, that will start the upset bid process that goes in 10-day increments. Any further questions or discussion? Those in favor of accepting the bid for the Grover property? And that motion carries 9-0. Second property is the old Central School in Kings Mountain. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we table the proposal for the old Central School in Kings Mountain.
Second.
Do you have a date?
We table that until the first meeting in January to 10th.
January 10th. Okay. I thought I heard a second. I didn't. Mr. Blanton, second. Any questions or discussion on that? So the motion is to table acceptance of that bid until, well, it's just tabling the bid. We may or may not accept in January. So any questions on that? Those in favor, if you'd raise your hand. And that carries 9-0. Final item is the personnel report. What's the pleasure of the board?
I need to excuse myself.
Okay. Mr. Blanton's recused.
Make a motion, we accept the personnel report.
Motion by Mr. Hunt,
Second.
second by Ms. Green. Those in favor of the personnel report, if you'd raise your hand. And that carries 8-0. Motion to adjourn. Do we have one?
So moved.
So moved.
All right.